On March 15, 2019, Alaska State Trooper Captain Sarah Mitchell received a call that would haunt her for years. A concerned pilot flying over the remote Tanana Valley had spotted smoke rising from what appeared to be an abandoned homestead, nearly 200 miles from the nearest town. What made this discovery extraordinary wasn't just the location. It was that local records showed no registered inhabitants in that area for over 7 decades. As Captain Mitchell organized a welfare check expedition, she had no idea she was about to uncover one of the most isolated family units in modern American history. The weathered structures emerged from the wilderness like ghosts from another century. But smoke meant life. Somewhere in that forgotten corner of Alaska, people were surviving completely cut off from the outside world. The family she was about to encounter had lived in total isolation since 1952, developing their own language, customs, and tragically, their own genetic destiny. What investigators found would challenge everything they thought they knew about human adaptability and the devastating consequences of complete social isolation. If you think you can handle the disturbing truth behind this case, let me know in the comments. And if you want to explore more cases that authorities tried to keep hidden, subscribe now, because what we uncovered will change how you see isolated communities forever. The story begins in 1952 when Jeremiah Hartford, a 34-year-old former logger from Oregon, purchased 640 acres of remote wilderness in Alaska's interior through the Homestead Act. Hartford had fled civilization after a workplace accident left him partially disabled and deeply distrustful of modern society. Accompanied by his pregnant wife Martha and their 2 young children, the family established their homestead along a tributary of the Tanana River, choosing the location specifically for its inaccessibility. The nearest neighbor lived over 180 miles away, and the harsh terrain made travel nearly impossible, except during brief summer months. Jeremiah constructed a series of interconnected log cabins using hand tools, creating a self-sufficient compound designed to sustain his growing family indefinitely. He deliberately destroyed the access road after their final supply run in 1953, cutting their last tie to the outside world. The family's isolation wasn't initially complete. Trading post records show Jeremiah made occasional trips for supplies during the first few years. However, these excursions became increasingly rare as his paranoia about government intrusion intensified. Local indigenous communities in the region had oral histories mentioning the White Hermit family, but had little direct contact with them. By 1958, the Hartfords had completely severed all external connections. Jeremiah had convinced his family that the outside world had become dangerous and corrupt, and that their survival depended on complete self-reliance. The homestead's location in a narrow valley, surrounded by dense forest and steep terrain, made accidental discovery virtually impossible. As Alaska achieved statehood in 1959, the Hartford family had already begun their journey into total isolation, unaware that the world was changing rapidly around their frozen sanctuary. The March 2019 discovery triggered an immediate response from Alaska State Troopers, but reaching the Hartford homestead proved nearly impossible. Captain Mitchell assembled a specialized team, including wilderness survival expert Lieutenant James Kowalski and social worker Dr. Elena Vasquez, who specialized in isolated communities. The initial helicopter approach was aborted due to dense tree cover, forcing the team to establish a base camp 5 miles away and proceed on foot through unmarked wilderness. After 2 days of difficult hiking through snow-covered terrain, the investigation team reached the edge of a cleared valley where several log structures stood among cultivated gardens and livestock pens. Smoke rose from multiple chimneys, and the investigators could see human figures moving between buildings. Lieutenant Kowalski noted that the compound appeared remarkably well maintained despite its obvious age, with sophisticated water collection systems and extensive food storage facilities visible. The family's initial reaction to outsiders was one of complete terror. When Captain Mitchell attempted to make contact, several family members fled into the forest while others barricaded themselves inside the main cabin. Speaking through the door, investigators encountered a linguistic challenge. The family spoke English, but their dialect had evolved dramatically during their 67 years of isolation, incorporating invented words and archaic grammatical structures that made communication difficult. Dr. Vasquez gradually established trust by leaving food supplies near the cabin and retreating to a respectful distance. On the third day, an elderly woman emerged cautiously. She identified herself as Ruth Hartford, granddaughter of the original patriarch Jeremiah, who had died 15 years earlier. Ruth appeared to be in her 40s, but exhibited signs of severe developmental delays and multiple physical abnormalities, including shortened limbs and facial asymmetry. Through careful questioning, investigators learned that the current family consisted of 12 individuals ranging in age from 8 to 67 years old. Ruth explained that they had been waiting for grandfather's permission to speak with outsiders, but his death had left them uncertain about contact protocols. The family had developed elaborate religious beliefs centered around their isolation, viewing the outside world as spiritually contaminated. Most disturbing to the investigators was Ruth's casual mention that all the children shared the same parents, and that this had been the family's practice for multiple generations. Captain Mitchell realized they had discovered not just an isolated family, but potentially one of the most severe cases of long-term consanguinity in documented history. Medical examinations conducted by Dr. Patricia Chen, a geneticist flown in from Anchorage, revealed the devastating genetic consequences of 7 decades of isolation and intermarriage. Initial blood tests showed consanguinity coefficients ranging from 0.125 to 0.35 among family members, levels typically seen only in experimental animal breeding programs. The 12 Hartford descendants exhibited a constellation of genetic disorders rarely observed in human populations. The most severely affected was Michael Hartford, age 23, who suffered from profound intellectual disability, microcephaly, and a rare condition called holoprosencephaly, where the brain fails to divide properly into hemispheres. His sister Sarah, 19, exhibited classic signs of autosomal recessive albinism, combined with severe hearing loss and spinal deformities. Dr. Chen documented 14 distinct genetic conditions within the family, including 3 disorders so rare they had never been observed occurring together in the same population. The family's genealogical records, meticulously maintained in Jeremiah's handwritten journals, revealed the systematic progression of their genetic isolation. Starting in 1965, marriages had occurred exclusively between first cousins, half-siblings, and in later generations, between uncle-niece and aunt-nephew pairs. The journals contained Jeremiah's pseudo-scientific justifications for these unions, including his belief that pure bloodlines would create superior offspring adapted to wilderness survival. Dr. Chen's analysis revealed that the family's effective population size had dropped to just 4 breeding individuals by 1980, creating a genetic bottleneck more severe than those observed in endangered species. The phenomenon known as genetic drift had eliminated beneficial gene variants while concentrating harmful recessive alleles. Physical manifestations included shortened stature, average height 4 feet 10 inches, increased susceptibility to infections, and a 40% infant mortality rate over the past 2 decades. Most shocking was the discovery of a condition called founder effect syndrome, where the family had developed unique genetic markers not found in any other human population. 3 family members exhibited a previously unknown chromosomal deletion that affected brain development and immune function. Dr. Chen hypothesized that this deletion arose through random mutation and spread through the isolated population due to limited genetic diversity. The psychological examination revealed equally disturbing patterns. Dr. Marcus Rivera, a specialist in developmental psychology, found that the family's isolation had created cognitive limitations beyond those caused by genetic factors. The children had never learned to read, possessed vocabularies of fewer than 500 words, and exhibited severe social anxiety when separated from family members. Their understanding of the outside world was limited to fragments of information from the 1950s, creating a belief system that mixed outdated facts with elaborate fantasies. The family's medical records, maintained by Ruth, who served as their self-taught healer, documented numerous preventable deaths from infections and complications during childbirth. Her treatments relied on herbal remedies and folk medicine practices that had been passed down and modified over generations. The compound contained a cemetery with 23 graves, representing a mortality rate nearly 10 times higher than the general population. Dr. Chen concluded that without immediate intervention, the genetic load carried by surviving family members would likely result in complete reproductive failure within 2 generations. Investigation into the Hartford family's historical progression revealed a carefully orchestrated descent into isolation, orchestrated by patriarch Jeremiah Hartford. Documents found in a weathered trunk showed that Jeremiah had been influenced by eugenics literature popular in the 1940s, believing he could create a genetically superior lineage through controlled breeding and environmental isolation. His journals from the 1950s described elaborate plans to establish multiple family compounds across Alaska, creating what he called pure human breeding colonies. The family's oral history, painstakingly reconstructed by anthropologist Dr. Maria Santos, revealed several attempted escapes over the decades. In 1973, Jeremiah's daughter Rebecca tried to leave with her 2 children but was forcibly returned by her brothers and subjected to what family members described as spiritual cleansing. She was subsequently confined to the compound and died under suspicious circumstances in 1981. Her children were redistributed among other family members and integrated into the ongoing breeding program. The most tragic case involved Thomas Hartford, Jeremiah's grandson, who in 1987 successfully reached a trading post 200 miles away and attempted to alert authorities about conditions at the compound. However, his severe developmental disabilities and limited communication skills resulted in officials dismissing his claims as the ravings of a disturbed individual. Thomas was returned to his family by well-meaning social workers and was never seen outside the compound again. Family members later revealed he had been kept in physical restraints until his death in 1995. Jeremiah's control system relied on a combination of religious indoctrination and practical dependence. He convinced family members that exposure to outsiders would result in spiritual contamination and physical death. This belief system was reinforced by the family's increasing physical frailty. Several members who had brief contact with the outside world did indeed become severely ill due to their compromised immune systems, seemingly validating Jeremiah's warnings. The compound's layout itself reflected Jeremiah's control mechanisms. A single road led in and out, with multiple checkpoints and hidden observation posts. The main cabin served as both residence and prison, with reinforced rooms where disobedient family members could be isolated. Archaeological evidence suggested that at least 6 family members had been buried in unmarked graves separate from the main cemetery, indicating possible executions or deaths from punishment. By the time of Jeremiah's death in 2004, the surviving family members were so psychologically dependent on isolation that they continued his practices without external coercion. The breeding program had become normalized across 3 generations, with children raised to view consanguineous relationships as natural and necessary for family survival. The Hartford family presented researchers with an unprecedented opportunity to study the effects of extreme genetic isolation in humans. Dr. Patricia Chen's comprehensive genetic analysis revealed consanguinity coefficients averaging 0.24, indicating that parents were typically as closely related as half-siblings. This level of inbreeding had created what geneticists call a mutational meltdown, where harmful genetic variants accumulated faster than natural selection could eliminate them. The most significant finding was the presence of 15 distinct autosomal recessive disorders within the 12 surviving family members. These included Tay-Sachs disease, phenylketonuria, cystic fibrosis, and several ultra-rare conditions typically seen in frequency rates of 1 in several million births. The probability of these conditions co-occurring in such a small population under normal circumstances was mathematically negligible, confirming the severe genetic bottleneck. Dr. Chen identified 3 previously unknown genetic variants unique to the Hartford lineage. The most significant was a chromosomal deletion affecting the FOXP2 gene, known for its role in language development. This deletion partially explained the family's linguistic isolation and communication difficulties. Brain imaging revealed structural abnormalities in all family members, including reduced cerebral cortex thickness and underdeveloped frontal lobes. Immunological studies conducted by Dr. Sarah Park revealed that the family's immune systems had become dangerously specialized. Their limited genetic diversity had reduced their ability to respond to new pathogens, making them extremely vulnerable to common infections. Blood tests showed deficiencies in multiple immune cell types and abnormal inflammatory responses. The reproductive analysis was particularly disturbing. Fertility rates had declined dramatically over generations, with only 30% of pregnancies resulting in live births in recent years. Of the children born, 60% exhibited severe developmental disabilities requiring constant care. Genetic counselor Dr. Rebecca Martinez calculated that without genetic intervention, the family faced complete reproductive failure within 15 to 20 years. Most remarkably, the family had developed what researchers termed genetic hitchhiking, where neutral or even slightly beneficial traits became fixed in the population simply because they were linked to essential genes. This phenomenon had created unique physical characteristics, including unusual eye colors and distinctive facial features that served as genetic markers of their isolation. The medical team concluded that the Hartford family represented one of the most severe cases of human genetic isolation ever documented, providing valuable insights into the minimum viable population sizes necessary for long-term human survival. The legal ramifications of the Hartford case presented unprecedented challenges for Alaska's justice system. District Attorney Rebecca Thompson faced the complex task of determining criminal responsibility in a situation where traditional concepts of consent and criminal intent were complicated by generations of psychological manipulation and genetic impairment. Initial charges were filed against Robert Hartford, Jeremiah's son, and the family's de facto leader after 2004 for child abuse, sexual assault, and unlawful imprisonment. However, psychological evaluations revealed that Robert suffered from severe cognitive limitations and genuinely believed his actions were protecting the family's spiritual and physical welfare. His IQ tested at 67, with significant deficits in abstract reasoning and moral judgment. Judge Patricia Holbrook presided over the complex proceedings, ultimately determining that while crimes had clearly occurred, the perpetrators were themselves victims of a multi-generational abuse system. Robert received a suspended sentence contingent on his cooperation with family rehabilitation efforts and permanent supervision by social services. 3 other adult family members received similar arrangements. The case prompted significant legal reforms in Alaska's handling of isolated communities. The Hartford Protocol now requires annual welfare checks for any registered homesteads that have had no outside contact for more than 5 years. Additionally, new legislation mandates genetic counseling and medical monitoring for any children born in communities with fewer than 50 residents. Legal experts noted that the case highlighted gaps in child protection laws, particularly regarding communities that exist outside traditional social service monitoring systems. Attorney General Michael Stevens implemented new training programs for rural law enforcement to recognize signs of systematic family isolation and abuse. The family's property was ultimately transferred to the state as a research site, with proceeds used to fund the ongoing care and rehabilitation of surviving family members. Civil lawsuits against various government agencies for failure to investigate earlier warning signs were settled out of court, with compensation directed toward establishing specialized care facilities for similar cases of extreme isolation. The rehabilitation of the Hartford family survivors required unprecedented coordination between medical, psychological, and social service agencies. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, director of the Alaska Isolated Communities Recovery Program, established a specialized facility in Fairbanks designed specifically for individuals transitioning from extreme isolation to modern society. The adaptation process proved extraordinarily challenging. Simple technologies like electric lights and running water initially terrified family members who had lived their entire lives with 19th-century amenities. 9-year-old Emma Hartford spent her first month hiding under furniture whenever fluorescent lights were activated. The family's immune systems, compromised by genetic limitations and lack of exposure to common pathogens, required careful monitoring and gradual introduction to populated environments. Language rehabilitation presented unique obstacles. The family's evolved dialect required specialized linguistic therapy to teach standard English communication. Dr. Jennifer Liu, a psycholinguist from the University of Alaska, documented over 300 invented words and modified grammatical structures that had developed during their isolation. Some family members never fully mastered conventional speech patterns. Educational integration proved partially successful. The younger children, particularly those under 12, demonstrated remarkable adaptability and were eventually placed in specialized educational programs. Emma Hartford learned to read within 2 years and was ultimately mainstreamed into regular classes. However, older family members struggled with abstract concepts and never fully adapted to contemporary social norms. Medical treatment required ongoing management of multiple genetic conditions. 3 family members required surgery for physical deformities, while others needed lifelong medication for metabolic disorders. The family's unique genetic profile made them valuable research subjects, leading to breakthroughs in understanding rare genetic diseases. Social integration remained limited but meaningful. Several family members developed friendships with care facility staff and other residents. Ruth Hartford became particularly close to Dr. Gonzalez, serving as an informal consultant for other isolated family cases. However, most family members preferred to remain together, finding comfort in their shared experiences and modified language. 5 years after their discovery, 8 family members remained in supervised group housing, while 4 had achieved limited independent living. 2 family members chose voluntary sterilization to prevent passing on genetic disorders, while others participated in genetic counseling programs. Their story became a case study used in social work and medical schools worldwide, demonstrating both human resilience and the devastating consequences of extreme isolation. The Hartford case fundamentally transformed how authorities approach isolated communities across Alaska and other remote regions. The discovery prompted congressional hearings on rural social service delivery and highlighted systemic failures in monitoring vulnerable populations. Senator Lisa Kowalski introduced the Isolated Communities Protection Act, requiring federal agencies to maintain updated registries of remote homesteads and conduct periodic welfare assessments. The case sparked intense academic debate about the ethics of intervention versus cultural autonomy. While the Hartford situation clearly involved abuse and genetic harm, critics argued that aggressive monitoring of isolated communities could infringe on legitimate lifestyle choices and religious freedoms. Dr. Thomas Anderson, director of the Rural Communities Research Institute, developed new protocols balancing individual rights with child protection, emphasizing early intervention and voluntary support services. Medical researchers gained unprecedented insights into human genetic diversity and the minimum viable population sizes for long-term survival. The Hartford genetic data contributed to studies of endangered populations worldwide and informed conservation strategies for isolated human communities. Their case became a cornerstone reference in genetic counseling programs and population biology research. The story also highlighted the vulnerability of remote communities to charismatic but dangerous leaders. Sociologist Dr. Amanda Richards identified common patterns between the Hartford case and other instances of family-based cult isolation, leading to improved training for social workers and law enforcement in recognizing warning signs of systematic family abuse. Educational institutions began incorporating the Hartford case into curricula addressing rural social work, genetic counseling, and community psychology. The case demonstrated that even in the modern era, families could become completely lost to society, developing in isolation until their very survival was threatened. The Hartford compound, now maintained as a research site, serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of extreme isolation. Researchers continue studying the site's agricultural innovations and survival strategies, while using the family's story as a cautionary tale about the importance of community connections and genetic diversity in human populations. The Hartford family's story serves as a powerful testament to both human adaptability and the devastating consequences of complete social isolation. Today, the surviving family members continue their journey toward integration, carrying within their DNA a unique genetic legacy that will inform scientific research for generations. Their experience reminds us that even in our connected world, vulnerable populations can disappear entirely from society's awareness until tragedy forces recognition. As Dr. Elena Vasquez noted, the Hartford family survived for 70 years, but they didn't truly live until they rejoined the human community. If you watched until here, it means you truly care about uncovering these hidden truths. Comment, "I watched until here," so I can recognize the real followers who aren't afraid of difficult realities. Don't forget to like this video if you believe these stories need to be told, and share it with people who value investigative content. Subscribe now for more cases that authorities hoped would stay buried forever.